The quiet crack of a rifle shot was a familiar sound to Roy F. Dunlap. The smell of gunpowder was also a familiar scent. The meticulous adjustment of sights was a rhythm of his life. He lived these rhythms long before the world erupted in war. Dunlap was a sergeant of ordnance and a marksman of formidable skill. He cultivated a profound, almost intuitive understanding of firearms. He honed his expertise at hallowed grounds like Fort Sheridan and Camp Perry. This was not merely a hobby for him, it was a deeply ingrained passion. It was a technical mastery that the nation foolishly undervalued in its civilian marksmanship programs, he would later argue. Yet it was precisely this undervalued civilian expertise that would define his extraordinary path through the global conflagration. Then came Pearl Harbor. It was a thunderclap that shattered the complacency of a nation. It irrevocably altered Dunlap's trajectory. It was February 1942, and the call to arms was undeniable. He initially cast his gaze north, considering enlistment with Canadian forces. He then turned to the storied U.S. Marines. But at 27, and needing glasses, he was brusquely dismissed as too old. The U.S. Army, however, was less discerning. It was more desperate. What Dunlap found upon enlisting was an institution in sad shape. It was an army that didn't have from nothing in terms of equipment. This was a stark and unsettling contrast to the glossy, heroic images peddled by home-front propaganda. Despite his prowess with a rifle, his technical mind proved too valuable for the front lines. Instead of becoming the sniper, he found himself usually the snipee. He was funneled into ordnance. This was a realm of gears, springs, and precision. It was a world where keeping the weapons firing was as critical as pulling the trigger. At ordnance school, the irony was palpable. Dunlap's pre-war knowledge, forged in the crucible of civilian competition and countless hours of meticulous study, frequently outstripped that of his own instructors. The U.S. Army was scrambling to build a fighting force. It relied on rapid, basic training and less experienced teachers. This underscored the desperate need for individuals like Dunlap. These were men whose deep hands-on understanding could bridge the chasm of wartime unpreparedness. The growing recognition of small arms maintenance was an absolutely critical pillar of the war effort. Though often unglamorous, this pillar led to the formation of highly specialized units. Dunlap was assigned to one such formation. It was the 98th Battalion, an ordnance unit numbering around 600 men. Within this specialized force, Company D, dedicated solely to small arms, comprised a mere 42 individuals. Their mission was clear. They had to ensure that the vital tools of war, from pistols to machine guns, remained operational in the face of relentless combat. Their deployment from Aberdeen Proving Ground was shrouded in a secrecy that felt both thrilling and unsettling. Insignia were torn off, a symbolic shedding of identity. The men were issued helmets that Dunlap wryly described as old 1917 soup dishes. It was a stark, unvarnished introduction to the realities of war. It was a world far removed from the polished narratives of valor. In this world, even the most basic equipment was a scarce commodity. The true heroes were often those who quietly kept the guns firing. The vast grey expanse of the Atlantic became the first crucible for American soldiers bound for North Africa. It was a churning indifference to human fate. Aboard the Mauretania, a vessel designed for 5,000, now crammed with 8,000 souls, the very notion of safety and comfort began to unravel. Far from the protected convoys many imagined, the mighty ship cut a solitary furrow through the Caribbean. This was a stark refutation of propaganda that had assured American troops would never be shipped, unescorted through dangerous waters. The German U-boat threat, a phantom menace lurking beneath the waves, dictated a circuitous 40-day odyssey. It extended their journey by way of the South Pole. This surreal detour underscored the grim realities of wartime logistics and the global reach of conflict. Durban, South Africa, offered a brief, jarring respite. Here, the first true glimpse of a world beyond America's shores brought not only the balm of friendly faces and a pleasant climate, it also brought the disquieting shock of a color line more pronounced than anything at home. A temporary social dilemma arose. It was swiftly, if awkwardly, resolved by declaring American colored troops honorary Aryans. This granted them access to white establishments. For many, it was a moment of profound cultural dissonance. It was a forced confrontation with a societal structure that mirrored yet somehow amplified the prejudices they thought they understood. The journey pressed on through the scorching Red Sea. A heat haze hung like fog over the flat, silent water. Disembarking at Suez, the colossal Mauretania dwarfed the British landing barges that ferried them ashore. Then came the radical environmental shift. It was from the vast, indifferent ocean to the equally desolate, yet intensely different, Arabian desert. The Egyptian State Railway, with its slow, open-air cars, carried them through sand-colored and grey-tinted hills. It was a landscape so bleak and dead, it made California's Death Valley seem like a summer resort. Yet, amidst this desolation, a small, unexpected gesture of international camaraderie unfolded. British soldiers, from their departing train, handed up cans of beer to the newly arrived Americans. It was a rare, unprompted act of goodwill. Their destination was the Heliopolis Depot. It was a hastily established operational base in the heart of this unforgiving desert. Here, the struggle to carve out functionality from nothing was immediate and immense. Hundreds of men initially lived in tents. They wrestled with rocky sand for a soft spot to sleep. November brought sandstorms so severe that visibility dropped to 30 yards. The sand, fine as flour, seems to rise, weightless, and blows like smoke. This forced men to don gas masks. Winter, contrary to desert myths, brought a constant chill of evaporation. It chilled hands working with gasoline. It drove soldiers to wear all their clothes. They desperately collected firewood to ward off the cold. The depot itself, built by frenzied Egyptian workmen, was a testament to resourcefulness. It consisted of one-story brick shacks with steel roofs, cellophane windows, and a piped water system that constantly warned of water low. Tools were scarce. Organizational equipment arrived months late. The daily grind involved prolonged sessions cleaning tanks. Combatants often met with the derisive cry, "Put him in the tank." Cairo, a city of 2 million, presented another bewildering array of contrasts. It was by all accounts one of the most expensive cities in the world. It was a labyrinth of persistent to the point of suicide hawkers. The pervasive practice of baksheesh, a demand, not a tip, quickly taught Americans they were a nation of suckers. The city's social fabric was starkly divided. There were a handful of wealthy families. There was a small middle class. There was a vast, impoverished majority, dismissed by Allied soldiers as wogs. They were small, husky, often lousy, but inveterate smokers and dedicated, if childish, chiseling artists. Cairo's blackout, with vehicles navigating by blackout lights and dimly lit streets, added to the sense of alien isolation. Strict censorship on soldiers' mail meant many almost gave up letter writing. This severed a vital link to home and deepened their sense of detachment. These early experiences in Egypt and Cairo revealed the true unvarnished impact of war. Beyond the front lines, it was a constant overlooked struggle to establish functional bases in challenging foreign theaters. It was a world where local economies adapted to exploit the influx of soldiers. The contrast between the idealized narratives of propaganda and the gritty, uncomfortable reality of their new world became clearer with each passing day. The desert wind, a constant, abrasive companion, had long ceased to be a novelty. For Sergeant Roy F. Dunlap, the initial disorienting months in Egypt had given way to a routine. While far from the front lines, it was its own brand of challenging. After the relentless journey and the stark establishment of Heliopolis Depot, Dunlap found himself in the quartermaster role. For a time, this position felt like a gravy train. He was the man with the stuff. He dispensed rations, even coveted fruit. He enjoyed the rare luxury of an icebox for cold water. Yet, this idyllic existence, far from the brutal realities of combat, was increasingly disrupted by the brass-bound jerks of higher command. Their seemingly pointless inspections, like decorating a post commander for getting rid of flies, only served to highlight the vast disconnect between rear echelon bureaucracy and the actual needs of the fighting man. Life in the rear, contrary to home front fantasies, was no picnic. The winter of 1942 to 1943 had brought a constant chill of evaporation. This made even simple tasks, with gasoline-chilled hands, a misery. It forced men to wear all their clothes and scavenge for firewood. Fleas and bedbugs were an angry bee colony of tormentors in their tents. It was a battle they never did defeat. Crucially, the myth of the always well-provided for American soldier in non-combat roles was shattered by severe shortages. American cigarettes, a soldier's essential comfort, vanished for months. They were replaced by terrible Indian brands that would burn the throat out of a 37mm gun. Footwear was inadequate. Even truck tires became black market gold. This was not the war of unlimited resources. This was a war of constant improvisation and doing without. Dunlap, a man of profound technical skill and a lifelong passion for marksmanship, soon grew dissatisfied with the racket and informality of his quartermaches. When the arrival of dedicated quartermaster troops displaced him, he found himself adrift in informal duties. These included guard shifts against local Arabs, motor patrols, and a psychologically taxing 24-hour stint at a hush-hush radio station, with orders to shoot on suspicion. This period, however, forged invaluable connections through hand requisition. This was an old army slang term for acquiring supplies and information through personal contacts. It bypassed the often ineffective official channels. It was a system that thrived on ingenuity and camaraderie. It challenged the rigid hierarchy, often associated with military life. He cultivated a key friendship with a New Zealand battalion armourer sergeant. He exchanged equipment and gained access to invaluable Browning parts and manuals. It was a testament to the power of informal networks in a theatre of war, driven by a desire for a more meaningful contribution and a recognition of the critical need for proper training. Dunlap collaborated with Lieutenant Dunlap. They established a rifle range. In July, the range was completed, 3 miles from camp. It was nestled against towering sand dunes. Here, under a detached service status, they operated with remarkable autonomy. They were free from the stifling oversight of detached officers who often contributed to wasted time. Dunlap, appointed range sergeant, poured his expertise into creating a functional training ground from scratch. Everything on the range was homemade. This included fragile wooden target frames on ropes to ingenious barrel coolers designed to dissipate heat. It also included custom-replicated O'Hare sight micrometers for precise adjustments. His personal Remington Model 1903A3 rifle, customized with a Type-C pistol grip stock and a Marine Corps front sight cover as a sunshade, was a testament to his dedication to precision. The range became a vital, if often overlooked, facility. It was here that the myth of every soldier being inherently proficient with a rifle was thoroughly debunked. Many recruits arrived having never fired a rifle before. They struggled through the 45-round familiarization routine with their M1s, which Dunlap noted were not accurate enough for serious target work. This routine was later cut down. His team salvaged ammunition from German, Italian, and British small arms from a desert dump. They made every shot count. The unique environment presented its own dangers and absurdities. There were stolen telemines and booby traps from the dump. There were encounters with horned vipers and 6-foot Egyptian asps at the butts. There was even a visit from King Farouk himself, who showed keen interest in Dunlap's modified M1 carbine and personalized Springfield. The practical expertise fostered on the range, and through informal networks, extended beyond daily training. Dunlap's skill found a broader stage in international rifle matches. One such significant event took place at the Swiss Rifle Club in Cairo. American teams competed against Swiss and South African squads. Shooting at 300 meters, under the intense glare from the morning sun and the distorting mirage, Dunlap observed the high quality of the Swiss Schmidt-Rubin straight-pull rifles and their 7.56mm cartridges. The competition was fierce. The camaraderie was genuine, as all ranks relaxed and shared stories after the match. Just days after the Swiss match, Dunlap was unexpectedly summoned for officer candidate school screening. Despite hundreds of eligible candidates, only a handful were selected. The colonels on the board, seemingly less impressed by his military appearance, bearing, or line of thought, were swayed instead by his general records of accomplishment. They valued practical expertise over conventional polish. His selection marked a pivotal turning point. It offered him a choice of transport and an allowance for extra baggage. Before his departure, his New Zealand friend presented him with 2 9mm headspace gauges. It was a final, poignant gesture of the deep camaraderie forged through shared challenges and a common passion for marksmanship. It proved that even in the vast impersonal machinery of war, individual ingenuity and human connection were the most potent forces. Sergeant Roy F. Dunlap, The ordnance man, who found himself usually the snipey instead of the sniper, understood a fundamental truth. The true story of warfare was not found in propaganda posters. It was found in the intimate, often frustrating details of the weapons that men carried. His was a world of springs, firing pins, and case metallurgy. It was a granular perspective that allowed him to dissect the myths and reveal the stark human realities of the global arms race. He saw errors in existing arms literature. He traced them to unreliable sources. He insisted on direct hands-on measurement and verification as the only path to truth. This was a counterpoint to official reports. Nowhere was this more evident than in the very ammunition that fed the war. By late 1943, the relentless demands of wartime scarcity had fundamentally reshaped cartridge production. It drove a global shift from traditional brass to steel. Germany, for instance, produced its 7.9mm cartridges in plain steel, copperized steel, and even in all-steel configurations for the MP43. Here, case, bullet, and primer were entirely of the cheaper metal. Japanese M99 7.7mm rounds arrived with blackened steel cases. Italian 8mm rounds also used them. Even the US, desperate to conserve resources, adopted steel for 30-aught, 6 blanks, 30 M1 carbine, and 45 M1911 ammunition. This wasn't merely a material change. It was a logistical earthquake. It challenged the notion of brass as the sole superior casing. It created immense supply headaches for every combatant. Beyond the basic ball round, the battlefield was a kaleidoscope of specialized and sometimes bizarre ammunition. The Germans, Dunlap observed, really spread themselves on armor piercers. They developed a formidable range of 7.9mm rounds. These ranged from standard armor piercers with hardened steel cores to super armor piercers with tungsten carbide cores. These were often color-coded with green bands or red primer rings. It was a deadly palette for the desert skies. Tracers, visible in vivid green, yellow, white, or red against the bright desert sunshine, served not just to guide fire. They also served to pinpoint Allied positions in Italy. But it was the Italians who, in Dunlap's view, went off the deep end on ordnance. They created a logistical nightmare by never getting rid of anything. Their ingenuity, born of desperation, extended to dirty ideas like the shrapnel bullet. This was a brass-jacketed round, weakened by cuts, containing 5 lead slugs. Rumors of nitroglycerin-impregnated bullets added to the chaos. Even their training rounds reflected this resourcefulness. An Italian 6.5mm dummy, for instance, featured a brass case and a wooden primer. It was a testament to extreme necessity. This bewildering variety, from high-explosive incendiaries to the most rudimentary blanks, thoroughly debunked any myth of a simplified, uniform battlefield. Dunlap personally enjoyed testing the high-explosive incendiaries in the desert. German technology, often hailed as superior, proved to be a double-edged sword. This was particularly true in optics. While pre-war manufacturers like Zeiss and Leitz were renowned for precision, their wartime designs often prioritized theoretical perfection over practical battlefield resilience. The Z41 sniper scope, intended for frontline use in any weather, was a prime example of this hubris. Dunlap found it an optical freak. It was optically unimpressive with its small 11mm objective and 14mm ocular lenses. It had a primitive adjustment collar. Its low left side mounting made comfortable use of iron sights difficult. It reduced snap-shooting in bad light to a desperate point and pull. Soldiers, frustrated by its limitations, often discarded the mounting bases to prevent Allied use. It was a subtle act of defiance against a flawed design. This pursuit of complexity, from delicate rangefinders to variable magnification scopes, often led to the Schwarzwald, Black Forest phenomenon. This was internal fogging and condensation that rendered precision instruments useless in the field. German technological infallibility was, in the grit of combat, a myth shattered by fogged lenses and squandered potential. Yet, in other areas, German innovation provided a significant tactical advantage. Louis Stange, a brilliant designer, had perfected the MG-34 light machine gun by the late 1920s. He patented the MG-15 by 1930, well before official rearmament. The Germans hit the jackpot with these designs. The MG-34, the Spandau, was a revolutionary weapon. Its 750 to 800 rounds per minute rate of fire was considered too fast by British and American standards for a ground gun. But the Germans evidently thought it okay and always seemed to have plenty of ammunition. In 1943, the MG-42, dubbed the first real punch-press gun for its stamped steel construction, further accelerated production. It boasted the fastest barrel change of any machine gun in the world. It fired an astonishing 1,100 to 1,200 rounds per minute. And for their elite paratroopers, the Fallschirmjäger Go 42, or FG-42, was the best of all shoulder arms. It offered both full automatic fire from an open bolt and semi-automatic from a closed bolt for greater accuracy. This design philosophy, prioritizing speed, versatility, and rapid production, undeniably gave German infantry a potent edge. In sidearms, the contrast was equally stark. The iconic Luger P.08, or Luger as it was more formally known to its designer Borchardt, was a stunning piece of engineering. Despite its widespread recognition, its weak extraction mechanism and extreme sensitivity to ammunition quality made it a liability. It demanded high-grade brass-cased ammunition. With the ubiquitous steel-cased rounds of wartime Germany, it would frequently jam. The extractor hook would slip over the case rim, leaving a fired case stuck in the chamber. Clearing such a jam was a difficult, multi-handed operation. It left the soldier up the creek and often prompted them to throw the gun in frustration. Dunlap also noted the infuriating inconsistent barrel length measurements in publications. This highlighted the disconnect between official data and observable reality. The Walther P38, designated Pistol 38, emerged as a superior alternative. Its heavy double-action, self-cocking design meant no need to thumb-cock a hammer for the first shot. It was a significant advancement. Crucially, it could handle any type of 9mm M.08 ammunition, regardless of case material or power. This directly addressed the Luger's fatal flaw. Beyond German designs, two other pistols under German control proved their worth. These were the Polish Radom VIS Mod 35 and the Belgian Browning GP. The Radom, a simplified and modernized evolution of the Colt 1911, was considered by many to be superior to both the Luger and the Walther. Its design, influenced by the pre-war Polish Army's cavalry-conscious philosophy, included a hammer release on the left side of the slide. This was convenient for use with gloved hands. The Browning GP, produced under German occupation at Fabrik Nationale, boasted a terrific punch and an impressive 13-round magazine. It put them in the shade compared to other pistols. While wartime production of all these models led to simplification and rougher finishes, they represented a pragmatic shift towards reliability and firepower. Even smaller sidearms, often overlooked, played a critical role. German flyers, for instance, frequently preferred small, easy-to-carry pistols as sidearms. The Italian Beretta Model 1934, chambered in 9mm Corto, or 380 ACP, with its 7-round magazine, was lauded by Dunlap as one of the sturdiest and most reliable semi-automatic pistols ever made. He knew its quirks intimately. He called it the bane and joy of armorers in Egypt. It often required improvised repairs with 50-caliber machine gun springs for recoil springs or two-piece safeties. He'd test-fire these with his own scarce ammunition. It was a testament to his dedication. In contrast, the older Italian Glicenti 1910 was a complex 9mm pistol. It was compromised by a lack of interest in the actual shooting quality. The Böhmische Pistol .07, a Czech design adopted by German forces, fired the 7.65mm or 32-7. It showcased a different procurement strategy. Dunlap, with a practiced ease, would often field strip the Czech pistol for examination. Its components laid out on a workbench, the barrel, slide, frame, magazine, and locking mechanisms revealed the engineering beneath its initial excellent finish. This quality regrettably deteriorated by 1944 to 1945. Across the Allied lines, British rifle design and training, revolutionized by the Boer War, had created expert marksmen by 1914. They were so proficient that their rapid, accurate volleys were often mistaken for machine gun fire. More advanced calibers, like the .276 Magnum, were shelved in favor of the battle-tested .303 Lee-Enfield. While its two-piece stock was frailer and its accuracy considered inferior to Mauser-type rifles, its easy bolt manipulation, light action, 10-shot magazine, and rapid firing rate made it formidable in trench warfare. Crucially, it functioned well in dusty, sandy, or muddy conditions and was easy to clean. The mass-produced No. 4 Mark I Lee-Enfield, with its simplified L-shaped two-aperture sight, prioritized ease of manufacture over precision. Dunlap, ever the contrarian, challenged the common American notion that the Lee-Enfield couldn't handle high-pressure cartridges. He stated unequivocally that it was tougher than American writers have rated it in the past. This pragmatic approach extended to handguns, British .380 revolvers, like the pistol No. 2 Mark I and Mark I Star, featured excellent Patridge-type front and square-notch rear sights. The British considered them the most reliable pistols. The US military quietly followed suit. It issued standard commercial Colt .380s to officers. It was a quiet acknowledgement that a hit with a 9mm or .380 is 100% more effective than a miss with a .45. Dunlap noted that the average military man cannot hit much with any pistol. He concluded that the bigger the gun, the less he hits. Ballistic data showed the bigger the gun, the less he hits. .380 ACP, with its 95-grain bullet at 890 FPS, was comparable in muzzle energy to the 38 S&W man-stopping 200-grain bullet. This removed it out of the popgun class. From the unglamorous details of steel-cased ammunition to the intricate mechanics of a field-stripped pistol, Roy F. Dunlap's granular understanding of small arms laid bare a truth. It was the constant trade-offs between precision, reliability, and mass production under wartime pressure. It was a world where ingenuity born of necessity, flawed genius, and pragmatic compromises defined the cutting edge of battlefield effectiveness. It was far removed from the idealized narratives of heroism. Sergeant Roy F. Dunlap, the ordnance man who found himself usually the snipey instead of the sniper, carried a unique perspective. It was forged not in heroic charges, but in the meticulous, often maddening details of keeping the war machine functioning. His was a world far removed from the glossy images peddled to the home front. It was a realm where promises of unlimited American ingenuity and equipment often dissolved into the grim reality of scarcity and improvisation. He saw the disconnect firsthand. It was the stark difference between the propaganda that boasted of overwhelming American might and the sad shape of an army that didn't have from nothing, in terms of equipment. This chasm, he observed with characteristic bluntness, was so vast that the propaganda this country swallows would make Goebbels roll in his grave. It was a profound disillusionment that fueled his lifelong mission to redefine military glamour. He recognized that the true heroes were often not those who pulled the trigger. They were those who ensured the trigger could be pulled. This pursuit of truth extended to the very literature of arms. Dunlap, a man whose pre-war passion for marksmanship and technical understanding often surpassed that of his own instructors, developed an almost pathological aversion to historical inaccuracies. He meticulously traced errors in existing arms publications to unreliable sources. He insisted that direct hands-on measurement and verification was the only path to genuine understanding. He personally identified 23 different military small arms cartridges. It was a testament to his deep, granular knowledge. His ingenuity wasn't limited to identified passages. He even designed a receiver wrench for the M1 Garand that supported all weak portions to prevent the common damage he observed. It was a practical solution born from countless hours spent in the repair shops. It was this unflinching commitment to empirical data, to the tangible reality of the weapon in hand, that set his analysis apart from the often romanticized narratives. The exigencies of war, particularly the relentless drain on resources, forced militaries on all sides into desperate but resourceful adaptations. Training, a cornerstone of combat effectiveness, could not halt simply because high-caliber ammunition was scarce. Germany, for instance, a nation often associated with advanced weaponry, adopted a profoundly pragmatic solution. It was the ERMA .22 caliber conversion unit for its standard Mauser car, 98K rifles. This ingenious system allowed soldiers to train with cheap, readily available .22 long rifle ammunition. It conserved precious 7.9mm combat rounds. The conversion involved replacing the rifle's original bolt with a dedicated .22 bolt. It inserted a tubular receiver. It secured a new barrel assembly with a pin and locking collar. A 5-round magazine and a special floor plate completed the transformation. It also included a .22 caliber muzzle and front sight protector. Such an adaptation was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of a pragmatic military determined to maintain marksmanship skills under severe resource constraints. It was a clear example of necessity driving innovation. Ultimately, Dunlap's narrative culminates in a powerful argument for the critical, yet often unheralded, role of ordnance personnel. He understood that individual soldier effectiveness was fundamentally reliant on the operational status of their small arms. In the diverse and challenging environments of war, from the freezing damp of winter in Egypt to the pervasive dust of the desert, keeping weapons operational was a constant, grueling battle. It was a role that exposed him to the relentless physical toll of the conflict. He suffered from bouts of malaria to the persistent torment of jungle rot that left his ankles, feet, and legs a purple-brown color. The joint pain was a constant companion. Yet, through it all, his work, the quiet, unglamorous labor of repair and maintenance ensured that when a soldier needed his rifle, it would fire. Through Dunlap's eyes, the documentary leaves viewers with a nuanced, ground-level understanding of World War II small arms, logistics, and the human element. It is a story stripped of romanticized myths. It reveals instead the complex realities of warfare where ingenuity, resourcefulness, and the critical contributions of specialized roles, like ordnance personnel, were as vital as any battlefield victory. His legacy is not just a technical inventory of weapons. It is a deeply human testament to the often overlooked individuals who, in their quiet dedication, kept the fighting going.